11:30. No, 1:43, 1:42. We have the Department of, or Division of Planning and Sustainability, budget hearing. Counselors Pro Temp Hogan, Counselor Nave, Counselor Gathers, Counselor Williams, Counselor Majuk, Piniago is running around here somewhere, and myself, Jones Rouser, and Mike Collins. Owen, you want to introduce yourself?
So, commissioners, or excuse me, counselors, I'm the commissioner, right? I'll get this straight. Good to sit with you again. Michael Collins, commissioner for the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development, with Deputy Commissioner Owen Kearney. So this is, we okay to roll straight into it, Counselor?
Yes.
All right. So, as we recently spoke about, the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development has multiple divisions. The new division as of the current budget year that we're in is planning and sustainability. As many of you are aware, for decades, planning was a joint effort with Onondaga County, with SACPA, the Syracuse Onondaga County Planning Agency, where staff were employees of the county, some of which were embedded with the city, including Owen Kearney. What we came to a mutual agreement with over the last year was that with the amount of growth that we've seen, it would be best for us to have our own department, and we do still actually liaison very closely with the county. There's a position that's within the abstract, that's within the county's planning division, that is supported very specifically to be a resource and support for us, but also it does provide that very direct contact to make sure that we're not planning in a vacuum, and neither is the county. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Kearney.
Thanks, Commissioner. Owen Kearney, Deputy Commissioner for Planning and Sustainability. As the Commissioner mentioned, while we're new to the city, while I'm new in a new role, the work we have done, I've been doing this work for the city, on behalf of the city for over a decade now, and excited to have the time to talk a little bit more about what we're doing and what we intend to do in the future. I have been with Neighborhood and Business Development since last July, so coming up on about 3/4 of a year. During that time, I've been a one-person operation. Recently brought on a sustainability planner, doubled in size, and I think maybe the best use of time is talking a little bit about the work that we're currently doing and some of the things we have lined up for the future. The budget itself, the budget before you, is relatively small compared to some of my colleagues you heard from earlier this morning. So happy to talk through those specific items, and then again also talk about some of the work, the other work that we're doing, which is largely grant funded and has been for many years. I think maybe makes sense to just start on the budget items and then get into the other grant funded work. Does that sound reasonable?
And where does your sustainability planner fall in terms of salary?
So that is under the contracted services related parties item 541700 on the budget, and that's the sustainability planner position.
And then the 92 is what?
And so those are three items. Two items are brownfield related, which I know Councilor Nave brought up earlier this morning. Brownfield properties, obviously an older industrial city. We have them throughout our community. Two, we have fully remediated one site, 101 Chester Street. That is at Chester and Bellevue, large city-owned property. The city, it's fully remediated, cleaned up, and that is a site that the city must do biannual testing, monitoring on, and that's just a capacity we don't have, so this is funding to hire a third party to do that work as required by the cleanup grant we have with New York State DEC. The second item on there, or along with that, is additional brownfield, $35,000 for to complete brownfield work at 2176 Erie Boulevard East. That is on the Erie Boulevard, essentially right across from the police garage, the police lot. It's a large city-owned vacant property. We know there's development, redevelopment, investment interest in that site, and we thought we were finished, the work we needed to do, and New York State has required some additional work. This would be funding to do that work and then make that available for sale and redevelopment. So really, all of this is investing in brownfield properties to get them back on the tax rolls, get them back into productive use, and so this is funding, a relatively small amount of funding for two particular ones. Go
You
ahead.
said all of this is all grants.
No, this is part of the city budget request for planning and sustainability. Those first two brownfield-related items that I just mentioned. The third and final item outside the staff, which I mentioned earlier, is additional funding of $50,000 for funding. And additional funding for planning-related work, specifically comprehensive plan. One of the functions of our department, planning and sustainability, is looking at, and as it says right in the title there, focused on and developing and implementing plans and tools focused on land use, urban design, waterfront sustainability, and really broadly speaking, long-term citywide planning. And so, you know, a project we recently completed was the Rezone Syracuse project. Again, a citywide project, multi-year project that has obviously affected the city in many positive ways. But continuing that, this funding request, the $50,000 request before you, would be to restart our comprehensive plan process. We have a comprehensive plan. It's approaching 10 years. Communities typically update them every 10 to 15 years. So we want to restart that process. And considering all that has changed in our community, update that plan, looking at land use, looking at sustainability, and this funding would be to start that process, working with third parties to develop that framework, but also, and probably most importantly, to begin doing some community engagement, going out to our neighborhoods, our community, and saying, hey, we've got a plan, we're looking to update that, and we want to jumpstart this discussion about the vision for future growth in our community. And it really a broad planning, city-wide planning activity. And I think that would complement, you know, with the updated zoning, with an $2 billion 81 project, with a housing study strategy that's nearly complete. There's a lot of things, in addition to all the development that my colleague Eric Ennis spoke about. There is a lot that we are anticipating, but also need to continue to plan for. And so that funding, that's I guess the fourth and final part of the request of the budget before you. And again, happy to talk about some of the additional work that we're doing that is grant funded, which was nothing really that I just mentioned.
What was the cleanup grant?
So that's under that professional services line item. So of that $92,500, $50,000 of that is for the comprehensive planning work, and the remaining approximately $42,000 would be for that brownfield-related work. Both of them, really three sites, two on Erie Boulevard and the one on Chester Street that I mentioned. All city-owned parcels.
I'm sorry, Owen, where is all of that listed? Can you send it to us? Because I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I don't.
Yes, happy to share
Yeah.
all of that, those addresses, and just maybe, matter of fact, I have it all here. I can share this with you, and just bulleted, what are the addresses and what exactly are we doing at each
Yeah,
one?
right, the breakdown of that.
And,
Yep.
and those were city-owned properties, you said?
That is correct.
Okay.
All of them are. So the investments that we're making are for city-owned properties that ultimately we want to get back into productive use.
Had a question. Oh, so I just heard yesterday, actually, there was a property that is currently being, I'm not 100% sure if it's being renovated or not. I don't know if they just saw some people in there, but it is it was a local laundromat. And apparently someone just recently bought it, and the individual who told me said that they're in there doing work, and I'm like, I don't think so. But that would be would that be classified as a brownfield? It was a laundromat for a very long.
Potentially.
Dry cleaners, I'm sorry, dry cleaners.
Potentially. And that doesn't preclude, you know, the establishment of another dry clean or laundromat, something like that. Many of the brownfield properties that I mentioned earlier are all, again, city-owned vacant properties in some stage of remediation. Again, Chester Street fully remediated, the other two in the process of remediation. But that doesn't necessarily preclude redevelopment of a site. For when you have residential standards, commercial standards, that's when, you know, a developer may have to do additional work to remediate the site, but not in every case.
So in the event that it is a possibility or it is a brownfield, what are the restrictions for, not restrictions, but responsibilities of the possible sellers to release that information to buyers?
That's typically a requirement for sale, just, you know, anybody that's bought or sold a house or a property, those types of disclosures are something that has to be disclosed. Obviously, anybody doing due diligence on a property is going to look at those former uses, auto-related uses, laundry-related, dry cleaning-related uses are typically make up a lot of the brownfields in our community, that along with former industrial sites. So that is something that the city wouldn't necessarily be directly
Yeah.
involved in. And I should mention, brownfield regulations really largely under the jurisdiction of New York State. So the partnerships that we have and the work that I described earlier is largely through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I know my colleague Eric mentioned a program that we're doing with the EPA. So really working with state and federal partners to affect these positively affect these brownfield properties in our community. But there's a lot of them out there.
So I'm guessing, well, not guessing, but I'm just wondering if maybe Eric might have the answer for that is, so if someone was unaware but they came down to the permitting portion, at any time is that brought up?
Good morning, Eric Ennis, Neighborhood and Business Development. So it would, oftentimes it can depend on what's to level of extent that they're changing the property, because there are times, I mean, if you are continuing the use as is, oftentimes from a permitting perspective, it's not even a change of use. So I think continuing the operations of a dry cleaner laundromat would not be a problem. If you are making significant repairs, rehabilitation, any excavation, I mean, anything that potentially could do ground level disturbance, that would immediately cause concern. Now, there's a couple ways, like Owen talked about the due diligence process. Any bank, any traditional bank, and even speaking from Sedco's perspective, and obviously we're now entering into the environmental side with lending, and this is going to, but we have experts that we're going to be working with that are helping guide us on this. Any bank is going to want to see that there's been analysis done on the soil conditions, and then any loan is going to take that into consideration. And so the benefit, there's kind of two steps you can do with environmental studies. One is called a phase one. That it really lets you look at the history of the site. They'll go through the DEC spill list, which is a publicly available list where you can actually see where spills over the last many decades have taken place. Even if it's not in the immediate property itself, it could be a spill that took place in close proximity, and some of that infiltration of those contaminants could have come into the property. So all of that as a phase one. And then if there is any concern or findings that need to result in further information, it's called a phase two. Now, these can be expensive things. It's part of what this loan program will be able to help pay for. But really, any properties in the city, and of course we have that industrial legacy here in Syracuse, if you're making significant changes to a property, and if it particularly was a auto repair or any number of uses that you may not even expect, but you're coming across because of the history of the site, it is best to do that phase one, and any bank, any sophisticated lender is going to make sure that that's required too. So in the case, and there are times where we see this, but if it is somebody that's doing some sort of sidearm transaction, or if they're, they may not be working with an attorney or they may not be working with a lender, then theoretically someone may be acquiring a property where they don't know the extent of the environmental damage. That's certainly something we always want to make sure people are being cognizant and aware when they're buying property. But when it's coming before the permit office, or if they're working with a bank or with an attorney, we really want to make sure and stress people are doing their due diligence on these types of properties.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm not sure who will field this, maybe both of you. But in terms of the professional services line, we're talking about a long-term plan, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And, I'm an environmentalist, believer in climate change, and, probably won't deal with cash capital. It'll probably be dealing with more of that long-term project. Probably the most famous metric out there, the World Bank estimates a 4-to-1 return on investment in terms of investing in adaptation to climate change rather than response. Are we as a city thinking about that longer-term picture?
Yeah, happy to report that one of the grant-funded items is just that. We have a grant from New York State DEC, and just about, we're in the process, I expect to receive that contract, expected to receive it last month. Hopefully it'll be this month. But that is funding to do a climate action plan and a greenhouse gas inventory, fully funded through New York State. Part of the new sustainability planner's role and responsibility will be project managing that, working with local partners, state partners, internal partners here in the community to do just that, which we had done greenhouse gas inventory, which is, for those of you not aware, kind of a foundational data collection of greenhouse gas sources in our community, including city operations. And basically so you have that foundational data, the climate action plan, or what are actions that the city, the municipality can take, but also we can take in the community. And so spinning out what are initiatives, what are new city policies, what are programs, and so that work will be a big part of our division's work really ramping up once we're under contract with New York State, presumably this summer. So to get right to the point, that will be sort of a marquee item that our division is working on over the next 18 months.
How much is it and how long?
It's a $200,000 grant in total, and that will be used for contractual services. We'll be working with folks that have done this work elsewhere and that can perform that rather technical greenhouse gas inventory that city staff can't do. But speaks to, despite having a relatively small budget, even for two of us, leveraging those other grants and that, our work in the lakefront that I've been working very closely with Councilor Hogan on, our lakefront planning, our implementation plan that I've been before you, one of the projects, the Progress Park, the design that we're going to do to redesign that park, design and construction, grants with United States Department of Energy for solar lighting in parks. All of this is outside funding for projects that our division will be focused on, either are focused on or will be over the next 12 to 18 months. In addition to that climate action plan, that really being a big one that we'll be working on.
It's 2 years or one?
I think realistically, it looks like about a year and a half. I believe those contracts are typically 2 to 3 year contracts with the state, but we hope to get that done. And that also includes a public engagement, really raising the visibility of this issue, talking to folks in our community, not only community members, but business owners, institutional partners, transit agencies. It touches a lot. And so that is going to be a broad evaluation and a broad set of recommendations on the issues that you raise. And I share the need to do that because it's not something that we've done recently.
And I think Councilor Williams is a very, very important question that I think I have a lot of interest on as well. So it's a great that you asked.
Yeah, and candidly, I imagine we'll be reaching out to some of you to, as we ramp up, and folks, counselors that are particularly interested or maybe want to help participate in it. These typically have these types of projects have an advisory committee. I'm happy to talk to counselors that are interested in being maybe a little bit more involved, so.
The practical implication of the most polluted lake in the United States being turned into a recreational activities, creek walk, housing, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a lot of effort, but you put a lot of effort into making a plan that we could abide by as far as that goes.
And Councilor Hogan's referencing the local waterfront revitalization plan. That's a plan that we've been before you. We're about 95% complete. That'll be before you for authorization probably within the coming weeks to finalize that. And one of the main things that we heard as part of that planning process really over the last couple of years, and this is the area focused on the Inner Harbor, lakefront area, Bear Street, Hiawatha Boulevard, the ballpark. I was actually out at the Washington Square group a few weeks ago. And there's really been broad support about thinking about this area. How do we connect this area to the surrounding neighborhoods, Franklin Square, Washington Square, North Side more generally. Obviously an area that has a lot of vacant and underutilized land, so economic development is a big portion of that. But also one of the big things that we heard, kind of a top-tier goal, is recreation. And, 20 years ago, if you talked to somebody about recreation on the Inner Harbor or Onondaga Lake or Onondaga Creek, that wasn't something that we were hearing from the community. And obviously the work that the county and others have done to clean up some of those water bodies is starting. People are talking about connections for fishing and putting in for kayaks, obviously.
Large-scale public events all
Right.
summer.
Right.
And in the winter,
Councilor
too.
Montos has talked to me about ideas for Progress Park. We've got the Parks Department working on the fully accessible playground and concession area right there. So how do we focus that? I think that's a good example of planning that can help focus our municipal investments, our city investments out there, partnerships with, we know New York State DOT is making huge investments along North Clinton Street, the interchange north of the city, Hiawatha Boulevard, Bear Street, North Clinton, but also private development. We know there's some large landowners out there that are either have reinvestment, mixed-use development planned or, in the works.
In the past, planning was done on maybe a micro level on neighborhoods, and now it's sort of you see, especially the Inner Harbor, where we're knitting everything together. I know when Marty and I advocated for the municipal sidewalk program along Park Street, so it would help out our immigrant community get to the market and all that. Now that, the traffic utilization is going to happen, but all that stuff has to be planned, and, you're a planner, and,
It all fits together.
So.
Connectivity, new Americans, safety, economic development, recreation, a lot of what planning does more broadly, if you're thinking, wow, this is really pretty broad and touches, is a lot of the work we do is convening. And so whether it's these lakefront area plans, whether it's a citywide sustainability plan, or whether it's something like the climate action plan that I mentioned earlier, convening the community, whether it's residents, neighborhoods, partners, experts, in the development of these plans that will help influence city policy and hopefully influence outside investments in these areas also.
And as far as the historic preservation, what role do you play in that, and what is the allocated funding that is tied to that?
That's a good question, and one that I'll touch on first. I work very closely with a preservation planner in the previous arrangement, planning and preservation, Kate Allwater, our colleague, and I work very closely on the update to the preservation ordinance, which was part of rezone. Her role is currently in the
Codes Department specifically, embedded within permitting. I think the way that I keep this in my head is when you look at the work that planning and sustainability does, it's creating the structure for how will we grow and how should we grow, and then it hands it off to the execution that'll happen within the other departments. And so, Landmark Preservation Board, since that's looking at very specifically individual properties, occasionally, a neighborhood. That's work that is its regular operations fit closest with that of permitting and code enforcement.
I just want to go back about the Inner Harbor.
Sure.
There's a lot of development potential, Van Rensselaer Street, Solar, and I see these signs up for core development. So they own these properties.
They own some of it, particularly along Van Rensselaer.
So that's a lot. Are you working with them? What are they planning to develop? Have you heard anything?
We do work with them, and Eric and I, our business development team, again, led by Eric Ennis, is really the primary point of contact, but we are meeting with them, or at least on a call with them almost monthly, coordinating the work that they're doing. Obviously, they've made some investments out in that area. They've had other things that they've met with the city in the pre-development, during pre-development meetings for further development out there. But they're a large landowner and one that, the city and NBD particularly is working with on a regular basis to coordinate out there.
And are they still being tested? Because this was Oil City. Are they still being tested for any?
Well, Counselor, as we mentioned earlier, that is property owners and the redevelopment, the development or redevelopment of properties is largely going to be under the jurisdiction of New York State. And so they will have to comply with any institutional controls, which are, hey, this is a brownfield and it can be used for commercial or industrial uses. But if you want to use it for residential redevelopment, you may have to do some remediation. All of those, that's very simplified, but all of those conditions and standards and oversight, it would be part of development out there. And I think Eric touched upon that earlier. And that's really citywide, quite frankly.
And I hate to backtrack to that same question again, but so because I'm very close to this area where this particular property is, this property that was the dry cleaner closed down, and they had issues selling due to the zoning. It was zoned as it was all my life it was a dry cleaner, and it was apparently zoned as a residential.
Okay.
So I don't know if they had I don't even think they know, but if it was under a variance or not. However, so I guess that's more the concern that I have, that I'll just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and happy to, if it's an address you want me to take a closer look at our zoning, coordinate with some of the folks at NBD, happy to do a little homework on that offline, Counselor.
So just a quick question. The staff development, where is it, or is it all in the NBD?
So staff development falls in for planning and sustainability
yes.
is going to be pulled out of, as it is this year, pulled out of the overall line for staff development within neighborhood and business development.
Okay. And how many are with you directly?
Two of us in the
Two of us,
department,
okay,
myself
Really
and
train each
Karina
other.
Freeland.
You guys train each other.
Yes, you're doing that.
One-on-one every day.
No, we're, but.
It's like a basketball.
But the training, I think, is a relevant and a good question, Counselor, because we are going to be increasingly doing work that the city either hasn't done or doesn't have a whole lot of experience, and particularly with the greenhouse gas inventory, the climate work, sustainability planning. So partnerships, we're meeting with the counties, a similar sustainability office in the county. We're meeting with them next week. We're attending a conference up at ESF on environmental stewardship tomorrow. So that staff development it's important, I know, for a lot of our professional offices, but I think it's particularly relevant for us. And the good thing is there's a lot of opportunities here locally with some of the partner institutions, educational institutions, particularly SUNY ESF.
So who's this other person with you?
Myself and Karina Freeland, who was was in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development as a neighborhood planner, and is now, as of March, middle of last week, moved on and is now in the role of sustainability planner. And we're going to be working closely together on all the stuff I have talked about over the last half an hour.
All right.
Happy
How
to.
important is flexibility here? I mean, I think as we look into the future, we're gonna have to like address things that we probably don't even know are coming down the pike right now. And I think with you.
Entirely agree.
And I talked to the commissioner about it, Michelle, certainly. I mean, we're like, we have to be as nimble as possible in order to make sure that the city garners enough residents, businesses, you know, that we can.
Yeah. And I think much of our work, and while it's we've talked about brownfields, we've talked about
We haven't
waterfront.
talked about rezone, and I think.
Well, and
rezone-
I'm going to save that for.
I was trying not to bring that up.
For Deputy Commissioner Dishall. I don't want to preempt his zoning.
thunder?
Yeah, no. Obviously, I was very involved in that project, but that is something that Jake and his team are really leading the effort and doing a great job with.
They have
but-
to implement. but
That-
they
that's
have to
correct.
Plan.
Yeah, and that's a good example of how planning, some of these, the lakefront planning, the rezone plan, the upcoming climate action and greenhouse gas planning, it's a little broader. It can affect city operations, it can affect city policies, but we're not necessarily the ones, reviewing zoning. I'm not the one now reviewing zoning applications for compliance with rezone. We have a great staff that's on board to do that.
Somebody's trying to get in here for a budget meeting. Can you imagine that?
So people often try to break in to listen to Deputy Commissioner.
That would be a first.
must have
Normally,
heard about
I'm
this
clearing the room,
sustainability.
counselors. But it's broad work, and I think, when I'm describing the work we're doing, much like my colleagues in NBD, it's broadly focused on quality of life. How do we improve quality of life in our community, in our neighborhoods, and our business corridors and elsewhere?
I think, Owen, this direction of sustainability is a good direction to go in.
I agree.
And you look excited, so
Yeah,
that's a plus.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
support, Counselor.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep getting excited. I think it'll get us all excited, too.
Good, that's, more to come. Thank you, counselors.
All right, thanks, Owen. Thanks, commissioners and counselors. I call this meeting or have a motion on the table. All right. Second. So moved.
Thank you.